I have always thought of systems as these like deeply unnatural, hard to sustain things that other people are good at and I am very bad at. Hi there, and welcome to the Chaotic Business Podcast, where we do things a little bit different. I'm not about to give you the perfect business blueprint or tell you how many times to post on Instagram this week, because frankly, I don't think that's what makes good business owners successful. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be plenty of strategy here on this podcast, but it'll be more inspirational and less prescriptive, because you didn't start your own business just for somebody to tell you what to do. Welcome to the Chaotic Business Podcast. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Chaotic Business Podcast. I am really excited for this episode because it is especially chaotic. I have a theory that chaos and order are not opposites, they're not rivals, they are twins. They are different sides of the same coin. And a lot of this episode was actually inspired by an episode of the podcast Regenerative Business with Sam Garcia. So I will link that in the description, the show notes, wherever, because a lot of this was inspired by something she said. She said that a lot of creatives, a lot of very sensitive people, a lot of us with ADHD, we resist systems because we kind of view our natural chaos as being the opposite of systems. And so as a result, we feel like systems are not being true to ourselves, right? Not being true to who we are. And they feel unnatural, they feel hard, they don't feel good. And we interpret that to mean that we shouldn't use them or that we can't use them. And she went on to say that like systems are the most natural thing in the world. And I was like, wait a minute. What are you talking about? I have always thought of systems as these like deeply unnatural, hard to sustain things that other people are good at and I am very bad at. And for her to say that systems are natural really struck a chord with me, and it made me think of the Fibonacci sequence. So this is where this episode gets a little chaotic because you're going to come with me on this journey through a metaphor, okay? I, listening to this podcast, felt like I had this huge, beautiful breakthrough where I was like, I am the Fibonacci sequence. And if you don't know, the Fibonacci sequence is a sequence of numbers where the first two numbers add on to each other, and then the second number and the third number add on to each other, then the third and the fourth. So it goes 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on and so forth, right? And when you represent the Fibonacci sequence visually with squares, where each square has that many, has that length of a side, so like, let me explain that better. I'll put up a picture if you're watching on YouTube. So like, here's the Fibonacci sequence and what it looks like. But basically, if you have a square with that length of like 1 and 1, and then 2 and 2, and then 3 and 3, and then 5 and 5, it makes a really beautiful spiral. And the interesting thing is, as much as the Fibonacci sequence feels very contrived and mathematical and very intellectual, we actually see the Fibonacci sequence everywhere in nature. Isn't that crazy, right? Like flowers often contain the Fibonacci sequence in the spiral of their petals. Galaxies sometimes reflect the Fibonacci sequence in their spiral, if it's a spiral galaxy. We see Fibonacci all over the place in nature, and it's so funny because it feels like such a heady mathematical concept, but in reality, it exists out in nature without anyone having to think about it or organize it that way. That's just the way it is. And I don't know, that was like a big breakthrough for me in my business because I was like, wait, if the Fibonacci sequence can exist in math textbooks and in flowers and in galaxies and take up free rent in my brain all the time, then maybe, just maybe, it is possible to have organization that feels natural, an organization that may look chaotic on the outside, but actually works for us. You know, like flowers don't look like they're following a formula, but a lot of them follow the Fibonacci sequence. And I think this is where sometimes formulas get a bad rap. We hear all the time, like, you don't need another business formula. I think I said it in my intro to this podcast. And I do think that's true. I think following your intuition is always going to be better. And also, I think that formulas exist for a reason. Like when I was in math classes in like high school, I always made my life harder by having to figure out why the equation was the way it was. I could never just accept the equation the math teacher gave me, like, oh, just plug the variables into this equation. I was like, but why that equation? And they were like, that math is above your pay grade. Just trust me. And I couldn't because I'm autistic. And I had to figure out why the equation worked. And that involved a lot of trial and error and a lot of doing math the hard way and trying to figure it out. Where was I going with this? I think formulas and equations, stuff like that exist because we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. If someone has figured something out and it works and it's useful, it's not like they're saying, let me stick with this metaphor for a minute longer, the math metaphor. When you go to math class, they don't say like, here's the equation and here's what to put in for the variables, because that would require no effort from you, right? That would just be like, here's some numbers. What they do in math class is they give you the equation and then they give you the problem and they say, solve this problem using this equation. That, I think, is how to use business formulas responsibly and creatively, is say, okay, I have this problem in my business. Here's the formula that can help me with that problem. Now I'm going to insert my variables, do it my way, but I'm going to use the formula because I don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. I think a lot of creative, sensitive, chaotic entrepreneurs, we are very drawn to reinventing the wheel. We are very drawn to this idea that if it's real, if it's authentic, that means I did it completely fresh from scratch every time. And I just don't think that that's necessary anymore. I definitely used to think that. I used to think that was the only way to be authentic, was to do everything over myself from scratch every time. And I'm just starting to realize that that isn't the case. I heard on a different podcast that I'll also link below, very different from Sam Garcia's Regenerative Business, but still helpful, is Yay for Business with Courtney Shaw. And she was saying, your business is not a hobby, which I'm like, yeah, that's true. And she's like, so treat it like a business. If something's working, do more of it. If something's not working, do less of it. Treat it like an equation that you can figure out because you're smart and you can. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, it feels a little cold, I think, to some of us to view our business not as a passion project, but as a business. And the thing is, we have to decide. Is it a passion project or is it a business? Because the truth is, those things are different and we need both of them. I have passion projects. I really struggle with monetizing all of my hobbies. I'm trying not to, but I have passion projects. I don't monetize those if I can help it. And I have businesses and I do monetize those. And I think if you're going to have a business, have a business and treat it like one. Use the equations, use the formulas, use the things that have worked for others, the things that have worked for you, and don't get so hung up with it has to feel good every second of every day. At the end of the day, this is also a job. And I know I talked about this a little bit, I think last week, where I was saying, it's a little bougie to say like, I have to love my job, because a lot of people don't love their jobs, but it's what feeds their kids, And I think I am having this realization in real time with you guys. So please don't feel like I'm preaching at you. I am also absorbing this. But I am realizing that I have been treating my business a little bit like a passion project, in that I want to do what feels good. I want to do what's fun. And I do think that it's important to incorporate fun into your business. And to have fun with it and to follow your intuition. I think that's what makes business sustainable, because I think if you only treat it like a job and like an equation, eventually you get bored and you don't care about it, especially if you have ADHD. But I think it can't be either or. And this is where my being autistic is coming in, I think, because with autism, you tend to have very black or white thinking. And my brain is like, it's either all fun all the time or it's all systems, boring structure all the time. And it's like, okay, but what if it's both? Right? Think about a playground, for example. We're just doing all the metaphors today. Think about a playground. A playground has very solid structure. Okay? It is sturdy and it's fun. And you can play with it however you want. You can be intuitive. It can be both, just like the Fibonacci sequence can be both. You and your business are the Fibonacci sequence. You have a natural order, both internally and externally. You have systems that can work for you. And I encourage you to explore systems. If you feel like you've never run across a system that has ever worked for you, maybe you need to create one. Maybe other people don't have it. Or, as I was saying before with not reinventing the wheel, maybe reach out to other chaotic entrepreneurs and be like, hey, how did you organize stuff? You know? Hey there, everybody. I am interrupting your podcast episode really quickly because I want to make sure that you are signed up for our next Community Business Oracle Session. These are community monthly meetups where we talk shop and pull tarot cards and hang out with each other, honestly, because running your own business is amazing, but it can get a little bit lonely. So if you want to see when our next meetup is, just go to the show notes or the description, and hopefully I will see you there. If you want to pick my brain, for example, I use X tiles to organize pretty much everything. I really love it. It's a lot like Notion, except for me, it's easier to use. It's a lot more intuitive, and I'm not even sure I could explain why that is. It's color-coded, and that helps me a lot. But other than that, I really don't know why it's easier for me. I think organizational systems are like this. You kind of just have to find the one that jives with your brain. A lot of people love Notion. A lot of people love ClickUp, Asana. I'm an X-Tiles girly. That's just me. So I actually have an entire business dashboard that my virtual assistant made for me and for us in X-Tiles. And she very graciously made a template of that dashboard that you can get for free inside of the High Priestess Business Mastermind, which I will link to in the description or the show notes. But that is my monthly business mastermind where I support witchy entrepreneurs who are just getting started and want to take their brilliant business idea and turn it into an actual, real, tangible business. But yeah, that template has everything. You can keep track of all the compliments people give you with a smile file tab. There's another tab for organizing PR opportunities, another tab for content ideas, a tab for like daily operations, SOPs. Literally everything about my business is in this dashboard. I would fall apart without it. And I think realizing that, I think I took that for granted until I listened to this podcast episode with Sam Garcia. I think I really took it for granted that I actually have and use systems. I think in my head I was like, no, I'm free and like I don't use systems, but I do, and I think I'm doing myself a disservice when I pretend I don't use systems. I think it helps me more to acknowledge the systems that work for me and have like gentle nudges in place to encourage me to keep using those systems instead of reinventing them every 3 months, which really helped when my VA made that dashboard, because I was like, oh, I could never make something this robust in any other platform. I might as well just stick with this one. So that actually goes to show the better your system, the less you need to keep reiterating and rebuilding the system and giving yourself more work. Right? So like if you can build a system that actually works for you and your brain, then it gives you less to do. It takes stuff off your plate, which I know all of you organized people out there listening are going to be like, no, duh, Megan, that's what we've been saying. But for all of you chaotic business owners out there, you might be like, wow, I haven't really thought about it that way before. I've always thought of systems as restrictive, and that's me too, so I get it. But I think systems actually give us a lot of freedom to play more in our business because we can play safely. right? It's kind of like, sorry for all the metaphors in this episode, but it's like when you go to take your kid to the park to play, it is safer and more fun to play at a park that is far away from the road, where you can kind of let your kid run wherever they want, than it is to play at a park that's right next to the road, where you have to watch them like a hawk and you have to really restrict their movement. I think systems are like the park that's far away from the road. The systems are the path and the fence and all of the stuff that keeps you safe. So yeah, you and your business are the Fibonacci sequence. You have order that works for you, or there is at least the possibility of order that works for you. And order is natural. Systems allow more room for fun, not less. And I really hope that this episode inspires you to make a system in your business. And if you feel overwhelmed, join us in the High Priestess Business Mastermind. You will get access to that dashboard template that I told you about. But remember, this podcast is not theoretical. We implement around here. So please go make a system that works for you, or at least give it a shot. You know, your first system might not work for you, and that's okay. Keep coming back to it, keep trying, because our systems allow more room for fun. Okay, I'll see you all next week. Thank you so much for listening, learning, and most importantly, implementing with us today. Go forth and take some big, messy action.